what was it like working with Glenn Corbett in the episode?
Oh,
that you
he
ended up burying
was
him?
just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. You know, I don't, he was very quiet. I mean, it's not like we had this big social thing going. We kind of did our scene and that was about it. But he's, as I recall, he was very nice, very professional, but most beautiful blue eyes you've ever seen.
Yes,
Oh, he was.
Yes, he certainly has.
It was so much fun to kiss him.
This coming from the lady that was in Lolita. So was that episode, was all that written to write you out of the show?
Well,
or was that intended to do that?
No, it was meant to write me out of the show. I was leaving the show to get married, and I was marrying a returned, what we call returned Mormon missionary, and I think they tried to kind of pattern that, because I think he was a preacher. I think he played a preacher in it. Yeah. Does anybody know if he played a preacher?
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
He played a preacher, and so I think they tried to kind of pattern it a little bit about after what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Yes?
Ms. Roberta, why did they, or who wrote the program out for you to get married off the show instead of like going to a finishing school? And bringing somebody else in that kind of looks like you?
Yeah, I don't know who wrote it, but like I said, I think they wanted to kind of, because they couldn't believe I was actually leaving the show to get married. I think they just wanted to make it as realistic, I think, for my character as.
Was it True Boardroom?
Yeah, I don't remember. Was he the writer? I don't remember. Can I tell my
You can do
my
whatever
cow
you like.
story?
Absolutely.
Okay, we were on the back lot one day, and Steve Forrest was our guest star, and he was the only person, I think I told Jim yesterday, only star that I ever worked with that really did have a side that they would only let him shoot from. I don't remember which one, but whatever it was, it had to be. Anyway, we were.
Ray Ganton was another one.
Was he another one like that? Well, this was funny, but we weren't shooting or anything, but we were just talking, and I am just babbling away, and we're watching him shoot a scene where they're herding a bunch of cattle. And I was just talking around, I happened to look, and I said, oh my gosh, look at that tall cow. And went right on talking, and they were mating. And I did
There's a thing going on here.
That was before the Spanish Fly.
And his face just went scarlet, because I did not have a clue. That's my claim to fame story.
We have more claim to fame stories than that, but that's a good one. That's a good one. Another question? Yes, Jan.
Mr. Drury, who was your biggest influence growing up?
My grandfather, probably. My grandfather. My maternal grandfather. My paternal grandfather died before I was born, so, and I didn't, I saw a lot of my father, I lived with my father when I was going to college, but before that, I had only seen my father in the summertime, because he would be in New York working all year, and we would be on the ranches in Oregon. And then he'd come out for the summer and Christmas and New Year's and Easter and all that, but he was really kind of gone, you know. And my grandfather was always there, and he raised me up. He was the man, and he's the one individual of all that I patterned the character of the Virginian after, because he had come west with a wagon train when he was about 16 years old, 15 maybe 15 years old. And they had been attacked by Indians, and he'd had to help fight them off, and he had all those stories of the early West and on the Oregon Trail. So I grew up with those things. I heard them when I was a kid. And he had me shooting a Winchester when I was 6 years old and knocked me right on my butt. And I nailed the brakes, and that was all she wrote. So,
Gary, you know, I was joking about Steve, but you were kind of the teen idol of the time when you were on the show. Was there some sort of a process for you to get the role? Did they come to you and just offer you the role, or did were you auditioning?
Yes,
for
they
it?
did, and they asked me if Lee J. Cobb was okay, and I said yes. I was under contract in the studio, and I was doing all the shows. I did some Laramie, I did Wagon Train, I did a bunch of shows. I did Bachelor Father. I gave, who was it? John or Noreen Corcoran.
Noreen.
Noreen. I gave her her first screen kiss. But I'll tell you, boy, they screened me up one side and down the other before they allowed me
The
to do
Corcorans?
that.
The Corcorans, Gary? Corcorans or the studio?
To kiss her, or?
All of them.
All of them?
The studio, the Corcoran,
Wow.
they took my blood. It was a little like that.
Oh, my goodness.
That was it. So I did all those shows, and when the Virginian was coming around, everybody was auditioning for it. I think Lee and Jim really were the only ones who.
Oh, they auditioned me. They did 3 screen tests for me. They screen tested 70 guys for the role of the Virginian.
70?
70. That's the number I
I
heard.
didn't know that.
And 70 different actors did screen tests for that show. And I did 3 of them. And all they said at the end of each screen test was, "You're too fat, lose some weight." I want to go lose 10 pounds and come back and do another screen test. "You're too fat, lose some weight." So I lost 30 days and 30 pounds. 30 pounds in 30 days. And then they finally let us know the Friday night before the Monday morning when we started to shoot that we had a part. Me and Doug both.
I tested
So I went right through the same thing you did. I went through all that.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was Tony Young up for the part of
Well,
Steve?
you know,
I think he was.
He's either Steve or Trampus. I remember that. I thought,
Okay.
and he's the only one that I tested with. I was also under contract. We were like stock players, right?
Yeah,
That's what they have us under contract for. And
Well, I was under contract as well, but.
Well, I know the
I didn't know that either.
You were Monique, was it about
Huh?
Monique James?
No, I didn't have much to do with her. I
Oh, that was later.
kind of did a detour. But, no, I just got signed to a contract out there. And then about 3 months later, they started testing me for the Virginian. I had no idea they had the Virginian in mind. If I had, I would have had a much better contract, but, that's the way it goes.
We
I
have
got to test with Doug McClure. I mean, we'd known each other, we were friends. So when we did our screen test, we got to do it together. So we got together, we planned some things to do. And one of the guys that was up for the part of Steve was Ben Cooper.
Ben Cooper.
Ben Cooper.
Whoa.
That would have been a big mistake if he had gotten the part. It was-
I like Ben, but I agree with you.
But he wouldn't have been Steve.
And nobody, when Doug and I were doing our screen test, there wasn't supposed to be any other actors who were up for the parts on set. But Ben and a producer that wanted him in the part came on the set. And somebody said, well, he shouldn't, and the producer said, oh, that's okay, it's okay. So it was like an intimidation thing, but it didn't work. So Doug and I just had a great time. There's one point when Doug is standing there, and I jump up, and I put my legs out. He gets his arms under my legs, flips me, and I do a backflip, and it was just, part of a routine of it, and they loved it. They loved it. And then when we got done, all the guys who had that day tested for Steve and Trampus, the director of the test said, okay, all of you get in front of the camera and just do whatever you do. So, okay, we didn't know what we were going to do. So the first thing Ben does is pull his gun and point it at me. And I put my finger in the barrel. And while I was doing that, Doug hung a feather boa on his belt. And he had this thing flowing behind his belt. And he didn't know it. Ben did not know that he had that on his belt. And at the end, everybody, they're laughing, and he did everything he could to have them shoot everything all over again.
He didn't want that on.
They didn't want to do it.
Sounds like a conspiracy there. A little bit of a conspiracy. Before we get the question here, I just want to introduce some people in the audience. James Hampton and his lovely wife, Mary. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here anywhere.
All right, question here.
Miss Shore, we couldn't hear you. Who did you say you did your screen test with?
His name is Tony Young. He has since passed away.
Okay.
But he actually is the only one that I ever tested with.
And who was he in your test?
At the time, I honestly didn't know, but I talked to him, years later. I saw him at a festival, and he told me that he was trying out for Travis, I thought.
Oh, okay.
I think, maybe.
I think he tried out for the Virginian too.
He was a Western. He was.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Did they? Oh,
Yeah, he did some Western in the 60s.
Yeah.
Good-looking guy.
Oh, yeah.
He had dark hair. Yeah.
I didn't
Really,
know
boys?
anything about this.
Yeah. He had a TV Western.
Yeah, he did. But I think he passed away several years
Yes,
ago.
he did.
So,
Yeah. Taggart.
So,
Anyway,
whatever it
yes.
was that they-
Question.
Whatever it was that they saw in my screen test, they must have liked. And then they got to know me. And that was where they made it a mistake. It's where
It's
they
like we're
went wrong.
eavesdropping. How many people auditioned for the role of the Virginian?
I understand there were 70.
70? You said
actors.
70. Can you name any of the others?
All I know, I was under the impression Tony Young
he may
tested for it, and I think Ron Eli tested for it.
Justin Bieber tested.
I don't know who the rest of them. They were all the young leading men in Hollywood.
In the Hollywood.
Right.
Okay, you had a question.
Why did you leave the part of Steve? It was such a perfect dynamic. He was the perfect foil for the three of you, you and Travis and Virginia, and it was just such wonderful chemistry. Was it wrote out, or
And you
was
wondered
it your
why I
choice? It was not wonderful that you left.
No, you wondered why?
You wondered why that, was it your
this
choice or was it their choice?
This will take me a little while until I know Roberta loved my wife.
They just get longer each time.
Complain, Roberta. I think you have more time.
Well, he remembers more things.
It's true. I was fired.
Oh.
Well, that was
I was fired. I didn't like it.
You used to say fire.
Yeah, I got fired. And it's because I went to Frank Price and I wanted to see if I could get a couple of more shows that focused on the character Steve, and he said no. And I said, well, I'll show you. And I went to Lou Wasserman, head of the studio. It was very nice, offered me a Pepsi. And music, it was really nice. I'll see what I can do, Gary.
And
Had I had any brains at all, I would have known that he had no option. He could not go to Frank Price and say, give him a couple more shows. Because had he done that, every actor on the Universal lot would be at his door asking for more stuff. So he had to let me go. The interesting thing, though, was that they brought me back 2-3 times in the next season, and they paid me more than I was getting when I was on contract.